Hey there, YouTube squad. I'm your host, Dan, aka Smash a Mash, bringing you another daily space and earth weather stream. We'll be talking about how winter is over in Lehigh Valley. You've survived the 2025 to 2026 snow season, hopefully unscathed. I dodged some injuries and some illnesses, and we hope you did too. It's been a pretty tough winter for the Boston DC corridor, and oftentimes we find that, we don't see any significant snowfall. This year was a little different. We didn't only get a massive snowfall, we got a few that sort of piled up on each other. And that created a scenario with major ongoing snowbanks and, bad road conditions for all you cyclists out there. And yeah, it's been pretty serious as far as the winter conditions. So we're going to talk about space weather, earth weather. We'll give you some forecasts. We'll tell you what to expect next. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for leaving a comment. Barbarian1111, the official coffee sponsor of the channel. So thanks for tuning in, dropping a like and a comment. Barbarian1111. Cheers. Raining in the desert, huh? That's pretty cool. A bunch of desert plants and mud skippers are, I'm sure, excited and delighted about your rainy desert conditions. Of course, those desert plants and animals, they really rely on those rains coming in. And so hopefully they are experiencing a boon to their life cycles. So let me just head up to the studio here and we'll talk about the stats. The stats and facts about space weather. Remember, folks, the sun's not going to kill you. The sun is your friend. It is the source of, life and energy on planet Earth. So, of course, the sun does occasionally do things that could jeopardize things like satellite systems, your comms, and so on. But sorry, folks, the sun's not going to end civilization. No matter how much you would like to see civilization crumble, I'm afraid that's not in the cards. Our finest days lie ahead. Doomsday prophets, they just lie and misrepresent science information. So we'll show you some imagery of the sun. We'll show you some imagery of the earth. And if you've got any news stories you'd like commentary on, let us know, and I'll consider it. I will consider it. All right. Let me just bring up the chats here and so on while we're getting things loaded. I'll show you some solar imagery. There's the GOES 19 SUVI. We do have a new active region that's risen over here on the east. That is the place to look for solar flares, as we stated yesterday. And we have seen a coronal hole high-speed stream here continuing. So the coronal hole high-speed stream is probably still here. We'll talk about it in a minute. Just got to break out the pop-out chat so that I can display your comments. If you're viewing in syndication and not seeing this video live, don't hesitate to leave a comment anyway. We do see all comments. And thanks for leaving a comment. Ethics over faith. I like the name, Ethics over Faith. That's a good one. As your sacred credibility is probably more important than a lot of other things in life, right? It's pretty hard to regain credibility once you've lost it. So hopefully you haven't. Let's check out the flare profile here for the past couple of days. We'll also show the latest SDO imagery from helioviewer.org. Yeah, no, we're not a flat Earth channel. We're a croissant Earth channel. We state the facts that Earth is shaped like the French breakfast pastry. So it looks like the HMI instrument's not sending data here. Let's close that one out. See if we can get the latest here from HelioViewer. That does not look like 171 angstroms by itself. What's up with that? Oh, there we go. We got 171 and 131. All right. That's pretty good. Yeah, so here's this active region that's rising. And unfortunately, we don't have the magnetogram for that, at least not from SDO. All right, and there's the X-ray profile. No significant flares here since yesterday. So 1M class flare in the past 3 days is all we've had. It's a drop in solar activity. It looks like a continued drop here, and we've got some regions that are in the process of setting on that western limb. Let's just skip ahead here. This is going to be a fairly short stream. And there you go. There's me once again, while we get things like the solar wind loaded. All right, so here's the solar wind data, and it's pretty uneventful here. No geomagnetic storms in the cards. Current conditions for the solar wind are the top line there. We'll talk about that one first. The total field for the interplanetary magnetic field is 6 nanotesla with a BZ of -1. Solar wind velocity here still elevated at 579 kilometers per second. Solar wind density here low, as is common with coronal hole high-speed streams, less than 1 proton per cubic centimeter. So it's diffuse, but still quite fast. Not like 700 kilometers a second, more like a little under 600 kilometers a second. So it's slowed down a little bit, but it's still what you'd call high speed. It's measured out here at Lagrangian point 1, if you're wondering, well outside of Earth's magnetosphere, which extends to about 12 Earth diameters. Next, we'll talk about the magnetosphere and the ionosphere and so forth. So let me get to that. Again, if you've got any news stories or anything like that you'd like me to talk about in the meantime, just drop a comment. And if it's something I want to talk about, I'll talk about it. If it's about the Herbston files, I don't know about the Herbston files. However, plutocratic corporatism is now the official world government. So welcome to the plutocratic corporatocracy. Hopefully you're paying your taxes and maintaining that plutocratic corporatocracy. That is when rule by the rich is designed to support corporations. Yeah, when the government is leveraged to support corporations instead of the actual electorate. That's what a plutocratic corporatocracy is. And here's our GOES magnetometer for the past 3 days. Things are fairly smooth there. Barbarian 1111 says, own nothing, pay no tax. Maybe that's a good deal. Although I don't know how you would pay no tax when you've got to basically pay rent, even if you own a house, even if you've paid for your entire house, you still pretty much basically got to pay rent because of this thing called property taxes. So just ridiculous. And there have been some promises about property taxes. I think there's great incentive to say, hey, I don't even want to own a property. I'm just going to like buy an RV and be a gypsy. I see the reasoning behind it. And it's something to consider. It's something to consider. My grandparents considered it, actually, because they were sick of paying property taxes, which just went up and up and up. And it's partially because where they lived, there's a massive multi-billion-dollar hospital campus there, and there's no protection for the actual citizens there. So you've got this hospital that pays a lot of property taxes because their campus is worth over $2 billion. And since property value is what determines what your property tax is, it makes everybody's taxes very, very high. It's also an affluent place. So it features many multi-million dollar homes. And so, yeah, property taxes, even on a small dwelling, are super high there. And they didn't like that. They found it to be taxation without representation, a common problem for Americans. Anyway, here's NOAA's forecast for space weather, and they're just forecasting a little bit of geomagnetic unrest today, some mild geomagnetic storming conditions because of the coronal hole high-speed stream. So that's probably not going to pan out unless the fields suddenly change, which they could. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to some more solar stats here. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux, otherwise known as the F107, which is directly proportional to sunspot number. Still coming up a little bit here, 119 solar flux units. And if you're wondering what the units are, solar flux units represent 10,000 Jansky of radio flux density. So radio flux density, you're measuring the density of the radio flux, similar to the way we measure X-ray flux. And Jansky is a unit of radio flux density that we use to measure radio traveling through a vacuum. So the radio frequency of the sun is super important. Its radio output is proportional to sunspot number. So it's a proxy for solar activity in general. Hopefully that makes sense. Here is a sunspot number from the King's Observatory, the King of Belgium. Sunspot number now down to, that's 70 sunspots, approximately 70 sunspots is the current state. Let's check out the coronagraph here to see if there are any new CMEs on the way. We did look at one yesterday morning. And there goes the moon past the coronagraph. So here's yesterday evening. And let's get to yesterday. Let's get to earlier yesterday. There is a CME there. But I don't anticipate any earthly directed component. I think that one might have not ejected. It just splashed back down, I think. It was right around here. Now, there could be a CME there. Don't be surprised to see a CME impact sometime late in the day on the 19th. So if so, it's going to be a minor one. There's a great view of the moon traveling past the coronagraph aperture. Really cool imagery there. You can actually see some lunar features as the moon emerges from behind the obscurement disk. We're going to look at stereo A. This is going to be an important one today because, like I said, there may be an Earth-directed CME there. It won't be a major one, but we did see that activity right in the center of the solar disk yesterday, so there is a possibility that there is an Earth-directed one. Let's cross our fingers and hope so. Join me in crossing your fingers and hoping we have an Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. Because mid-latitude aurorae are cool, and we want to see them. Now, if there is an Earth-directed CME, it would be off to this direction because stereo A is a few months ahead of Earth in terms of orbit. So that CME, if it would have happened, it would have happened sometime just after midday yesterday. And there is a little missing data there. So I do see an event right here. You see that on the left? I think that's an Earth-directed CME, folks. So that one, that's what we call a stealth coronal mass ejection. Expect to see a minor geomagnetic storm condition erupting from that as a result of that CME. Of course, you can ask a question, Barbarian 1111. That's what the chat's for. So, of course, you can ask a question, especially being the chief coffee sponsor of the channel. So, yeah. And of course, anybody is welcome to type whatever you want. Just keep it within the confines of the law, as this channel is a real free speech purist channel. We encourage all legal speech. Just keep in mind, folks, that there is a price to pay for your free speech. If you make yourself look like a dummy on the internet, you might get lambasted for it. That's the real danger. Uh, anyway, that's where planets are located. Keep in mind, planetary locations are not space weather. Space weather occurs between the Earth and the Sun. So all of this other stuff is not space weather. Jupiter's not affecting Earth space weather. Mars is not affecting Earth space weather. Venus and Mercury are not affecting Earth space weather, at least not in a way that we can reasonably sort of agree on. So if there is any effect from the planets, it's very minor. But at the moment, there's no evidence to suggest that the planets affect Earth's space weather in any way. We saw a minor proton spike yesterday, sort of late in the day. I suspect that was because of the CME that we talked about, because there was a filament eruption kind of right on the Earth side of the solar disk. So, but that's still baseline levels there. We just saw a tiny spike in the low energy. That's the greater than or equal to 10 million electron volts proton flux. So no major radiation there for polar flights or any out of the ordinary radiation for those in space. Shout out to our astronaut viewers. If you're viewing from space, make sure you leave a comment, as this channel has leveraged itself as we have for pushing a decade because of the ongoing increase in the importance of space weather. Background X-ray flux in the sun is about a C5, so pretty inactive sun there, but still looking like solar maximum conditions. We can see the sunspot number drop all the way to 0 at solar max. It's not really that surprising. And let's take a look at the heliosphere. Has Earth moved into a South Pole magnetic sector yet? Well, it's time to find out. So Earth is about to move into a South Pole magnetic sector, but not yet. So another, say, 6 to 10 hours, and Earth will probably be in this South Pole-oriented magnetic sector shown here in red. That is where the magnetic field lines point out into space as opposed to pointing into the sun. I'm sorry, they point into the sun instead of out of space. So these are North Pole, these are South Pole. So Earth is about to cross 2 current sheets out of the North Pole sector into the South Pole sector. The field lines are going to go from pointing at Earth to pointing at the sun. Those magnetic fields reach all the way out into space, well beyond Earth. So, of course, it is governed by coronal holes. Those are the polar fields reversing, as some of them are straddling the equator right now. You can see South Pole-oriented coronal holes in here on the east. And let's look at coronal holes from the GOES 19. The 195 angstroms wavelength is a spectacular view for that. Now this shows the polar fields in red for south and green for north, and it shows the solar B field in blue here. The B field is, you could think of that as the net field, because magnetic fields are dipoles. So as you can see, this is the coronal hole that's providing Earth with a high-speed wind right now. That's the North Pole coronal hole. And then over here, we've got South Pole coronal holes just rising. Those are transequatorial as well. So in about 6 days, those will provide a high-speed wind as well, just like the current one. All right, so coronal, that's what's up with coronal holes. Next, we'll look at the magnetograms here. El Teide is looking good. It's pretty fresh data there, so let's check that one out. Do we see the fields of this new sunspot yet? Oh, they've just risen and they don't look very complex. So the likelihood of large solar flares here not rising significantly at all, despite an M-class flare coming out of this group here. Again, solar activity pretty low right now, at least on the Earth side of the solar disk. Here's red light imagery, which shows the umbrae, similar to what you'd see if you used a basic filter from a ground-based telescope. You know, you can buy like a $100 telescope and be able to see the sun great. It's the size of the full moon. From your perspective on Earth, at least. And we do have degradation, so we're expecting the sunspot number to drop here as we have more setting sunspots and more degradation than we have new sunspots. So tomorrow's sunspot number is going to be like 65 maybe, something like that. So a minor decrease in sunspot number here. And we'll also show filaments. There's the filamentary environment. We did name this one yesterday. That was named after Take That Clouds. And it's still mostly intact here. So this one could eject and produce an Earth-directed CME. I have no idea who Jack Parsons is. The Marion Lewis says, has anyone figured out what phenomena keeps the Earth side of the sun quieted? So the Earth side of the sun is not more quiet than the other side of the sun. There may be an issue with the detection of X-rays that makes large solar flares about 4% more likely, and solar flares in general more likely around the limbs. So the center of the solar disk may be quieter because of some sort of angular way that the X-rays are emitted. In other words, if you're perpendicular to a thing, maybe it doesn't like to emit X-rays directly toward you. Maybe it wants to emit X-rays in an angular fashion. If that's the case, then perhaps that explains why limb flares tend to be 4% more likely and 4% stronger than center of disk flares. So the Earth-facing quiet is a bit of a misnomer. We shouldn't really call it the Earth-facing quiet because the Earth side of the solar disk isn't necessarily quieter. It's just that there may be some detection issues. Now, if we had more spacecraft out there with X-ray detectors, we would be able to, comment on this a little bit better. But the Earth-facing quiet may be just a function of the way the sun emits X-rays. Maybe it doesn't like, because the Earth side of the disk is very flat. The sun is very big. So you're looking at this very large object, and the center of the solar disk is quite flat from our perspective. Maybe X-rays don't like to come out of the lower corona. Maybe they don't like coming out of the lower corona perpendicular to the sun's surface. So that's one of the valid and plausible physics theories for the Earth-facing quiet, as it's called. But it does not appear that the Earth side of the disk is actually quieter. It's probably just a detection thing. And if there is a detection thing that makes the X-rays not like to emit perpendicular to the solar disk, that may tell us something about what the sun is made of. It's pretty serious. And it could have vast implications on all of cosmology, indeed astrophysics, and of course, heliophysics. So there's that. So yeah, fingers crossed that this Take That Clouds filament erupts. We do have two other filaments here that could use names. If you want to name them after living people, just tell us which one you want named. Tag us over on Twitter, known by crazy lunatics as X. Not a brand. The brand Twitter, completely destroyed by branding marketing genius, pardon my sarcasm, Elon Musk. Elon Musk. Electron flux here getting back into storm levels exactly as we forecasted. As this coronal hole high-speed stream subsides, expect pretty bad GPS performance. The GOES electron flux is measured using radiography from a geosynchronous orbit of the GOES 19 and GOES 18, and this is measured at the F flare. The satellites are really high at about 26,000 miles of altitude. The F flare is more like a couple hundred kilometers of altitude, depending on if it's day or nighttime. Here is your coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model, and this is going to show you where GPS errors will be most likely. The chance for radio blackouts is not really that high. I'm just going to sort of rock this forward here. Yeah, the likelihood of major solar flares is not there. So don't expect major radio blackouts. You should get pretty good performance from your high frequency radio transmissions designed to, you know, bounce off the ionosphere, get reflected by the ionosphere, and make it halfway around the world to your favorite radio target. Pretty good propagation. There's just a diagram of the ionosphere. The F flare, again, it's between 200 and 300 kilometers of altitude, depending on if it's daytime or nighttime. And here is the ionosphere. We're going to show the animation of it here. Let me just load that data for you real quick. So there's the raw map. That's what's going on in the ionosphere. And here's the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. Again, space weather's pretty calm here. Don't expect too many fireworks in the ionosphere. Do expect rather bad GPS performance and rather good high-frequency radio performance. South Atlantic and African anomalies both remain near the west coast of their respective continents. South Atlantic anomaly over here by the South American coastline, right on the equator. Same thing with the African anomaly. Now, right on the equator there on the west coast of Africa. It's super obvious from the anomalygram. They've been quite steady here for a couple of months, having moved thousands of miles. And let's transition to Earth weather. Crescent Earth. Here's a view of Crescent Earth. And we're going to bring up less frames here. Let's bring up 20 frames instead of 40 since it's a little earlier today. So there's the lovely sunrise over the Atlantic. And there are your comments. Thanks to everybody who's left a comment. Don't forget to press the share button. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to press subscribe. Otherwise, you may not see the world's most comprehensive daily space weather videos right in your convenient YouTube subscription feed. Next, we'll show Earth's water vapor map here. But before that, a little bit of promotion. You've reached the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. And we have merch. You can link it right in the description. Please support the channel. Tell your friends and foes about us. Again, press that share button. You can find us on social media at smashomash.com. I'll even put that in the comments here. By the way, these socks are freaking amazing. Look at how cool those are. They are very comfy, and they are moisture wicking as well because they are 58% recycled polyester, 22% nylon, 15% cotton, 4% spandex, and 1% rubber. So they're very stretchy, they're very plush. The SNN socks. You can also get magnets and all kinds of other cool stuff like a shower curtain to support the channel. And it's really cool graphics for your bike, your car, your fridge, whatever. That's our 2026 design logo. Change it a little bit. Same basic design, different color scheme. It's now white to yellow, orange, red. SNN, least busted name in news. Here's our water vapor map. We're going to show the full 50 frames here. Some heavy moisture there making its way into Texas and into Oklahoma as we stream today. There's a great view of the U.S. water vapor map scenario. When your Doppler is unclear, try the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite water vapor map. A little chunk of dry air here over northeastern Colorado. Probably because there's so much hot air coming out of Colorado. The Colton nonsense capital of the U.S., so much hot air, it looks like it's having an effect on things, folks. Look at all the hot air coming out of Colorado. Geez, hot air and nonsense. And thanks again, once again, Barb. Geez, Barbarian is really hooking us up here. I still haven't ordered the organic coffee, but I will. You can find links in the Amazon. You can find links to our Amazon storefront below this video as well. And you can even see some of our coffee selections. But yeah, dry mass of air here acting as a blocking feature. And you can see the way it's sort of blocking things. Let's actually zoom in on that. The hot air capital of the U.S. The hot air capital of the U.S., Colorado, where nonsense and cultism are a requirement. How many cult compounds have seriously been built in Colorado? I would say plenty. No, I'm not interested in camping at any of them. That sounds like a terrible idea. Let's go camping where somebody can impart a bunch of nonsense. Sounds like a great idea, right? Pardon my sarcasm. Here's our U.S. Doppler radar map, and you can see some indeed rain making its way across the desert, but things are clearing up for Phoenix. So it's going to be showers, some clearing, and then some more showers. As the atmospheric river makes its way once again onto land, causing the entire west coast to be a little bit on the moist side. There's the full map. Here's the forecast for all of our local viewers. Shout out to our cyclist pals who view these videos. Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, here's your forecast. Some patchy fog before 11 a.m. Today, a high near 45. Tomorrow, a high near 44. And Thursday, a high near 45. So, like I said earlier, winter is largely over, folks. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. And by the way, make sure you check out our shorts on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/smashamash/shorts. That's where a lot of bicycle tube, cycling tube is going to be present. So if you're only watching these longer duration videos, you may not see the shorts, depending on how you view YouTube. You know, if you're casting it to a larger screen or something like that, depending on what the UI is, the user interface might not recommend shorts. They are usually recommended on the mobile app and so on. But the channel has a lot more stuff besides these daily space weather live streams and Earth weather live streams. So check that out. This channel is not limited in any way. And we sort of knew that this would be a thing very early on. And this channel was leveraged for space weather, as I said earlier, because of the increasing importance of course, you know, private space flight. Because, folks, you're going to be able to go to space within 18 months for less than six figures. So it might cost $99,999.99, but that's less than six figures. And it's currently, what is it, about 600 grand to go to space? Fact check me on that one if you like. Let us know in the comments if I'm right. I think it's $600,000 to $700,000 right now for a little space flight. I think Russia provides private space flights for your basic consumer. Not sure on that one, but yeah, let us know in the comments if you already know about this. And let's move on to some more data. Here's the snow cover for the lower 48. And it's pretty snowy. Pretty snowy. And California is getting kaplastered. Look at the snow cover in eastern California. Yowzers. Seems like a pretty good day to hit the slopes at Mammoth. Here's our lightning map, and we do have some lightning here around in between LA and San Diego, it looks like. lightningmaps.org, your real-time lightning map source. It could save your bacon and cause it to not be overdone by getting struck by lightning. It's a real son of a bit turn when your bacon gets struck by lightning and destroyed. We're going to come back and show the winds for the planet, but first we're going to show a snow forecast here from tropicaltidbits.com, our favorite place to show forecasts. Here's our total positive snow depth change forecast in inches based on the GFS 72-hour model. And there you have it. So massive snows there falling in eastern California. Really the western part of the Rockies here in general, getting just plastered there. The windward side of those Rocky Mountains getting the most of it, but some of it making through here, making its way across the northern part of the U.S. and finally into the northern Mississippi Valley there. That's a 72-hour GFS total accumulated positive snow depth change forecast in inches. And here are the winds of the planet. We still have this triple low, which of course means 666, which means the Illuminati is performing satanic rituals and possibly consuming some baby meat there in the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, here in the North Pacific, it's pretty windy up there too, folks. Yowzers. Anyway, these are the winds of the Western world, surface-wise. These are the jet streams of the West. And we'll head west. There are the jet streams of the East. Shout out to viewers from all around the planet. Here are the surface winds. A strong low here, north of Antarctica, kind of in between Antarctica and Tasmania. Surface winds of the central world looking like this. The Mediterranean, quite windy here indeed. Strong winds there, making their way east in the Mediterranean. Here are the jet streams of the central world. We'll close out this video by putting up some more imagery of the closest star. How about the house favorite wavelength? And of course, while that loads, if you've got news stories you'd like me to comment on, we're going to show some solar imagery here. You do have a few minutes to get my stance on things that I am interested in. I am interested in AI, since it's absolutely idiotic and not intelligent. It needs to be rebranded. AI needs to be rebranded, folks. What about if we start calling it UI? I know it already stands for user interface, but what if we call it UI, unintelligent, since machine learning has no capacity to be intelligent and isn't intelligent in any way? Maybe we should just redefine the term intelligence. That way AI will not be misbranded anymore. But it's definitely fraud the way it is branded, because there's nothing intelligent about LLMs. So it's very interesting. And basically what's going on, folks, is we're seeing things automated now in 2026 and indeed parts of 2025. We're seeing things automated that could and should have been automated for a decade. So in many ways, there's nothing new happening at all. We're basically just going in circles, wasting electricity and water and the space on the internet with AI trash. So Norton 7506 says, no Juan is above the law. AI, always irritated. Yeah, absolutely idiotic. The only thing that's artificial is that it's intelligence. And the fraud is the claims that are made by people like Scam Altman and Elon Musk. Like the claims are just ridiculous. We're going to have an AI utopia sometime after we have a bug-free smartphone app. What do you say? Let's call it TAP, as in tap water. Okay? If you say so. If you say so. Anyway, here's the house favorite wavelength, 171 angstroms. We'll show a bonus run here after that runs all the way through. That's about 12 hours of solar activity there. And this is ionized iron, by the way. You can see some filaments suspended out here. This may be a more interesting active region here. We can see quite a bit of plasma magnetic looping. So this is promising. This is actually going to be the most likely spot for a large solar flare. There is some chance for a solar flare up here as well. But yeah, quite low solar activity here, and even expecting the sunspot number to dip a little bit into the 60s tomorrow. So let's show the 284 angstroms, another ionized iron species. This one's a pretty cool one. It shows the active regions as very bright. So, you know, what we're seeing here, what this is really depicting is where you see white, that means there is a lot of this specific iron ion, and where you see dark, there is not a lot of that specific iron ion. And of course, out here in the beyond the outer corona, you see almost none of that iron ion. It's good at showing the extended corona and sort of the intensity of all of these active regions. So, you know, it's even though the sun is fairly inactive right now, we are still only a year and a few months beyond solar maximum. So you're going to see lots more activity, lots more coronal mass ejections, lots more solar storms, space weather, CMEs, coronal holes, sunspots, solar flares, the whole thing. As far as 3I Atlas, okay, it's a comet. You've said 3I Atlas. It is an interplanetary comet, not a spaceship. If you're watching a YouTube channel that keeps telling you that 3I Atlas is a spaceship, you should probably lambast that, quote, content creator, end quote, and then unsubscribe from their idiotic channel. Because 3I Atlas, everything 3I Atlas does looks exactly like a comet. And nothing that 3I Atlas does looks anything like a spaceship. It acts exactly like a comet and nothing like anything else besides a comet. It has all the properties of an interplanetary comet coming from a different solar system or different whatever. But it's got the features that you would expect having traveled through space for perhaps even billions of years, but certainly millions, probably hundreds of millions of years at the minimum. So yeah, I don't know what will change my mind, but my mind is open to being changed, especially through a preponderance of facts. So if we have good facts coming through, then I'm going, especially physically plausible facts. Those are my favorite kind of theories, the ones that are plausible in the realm of physics, and those are the ones that I like to consider. So anyway, I don't know what you're telling me to read, but this is where we'll close things out. We'll show the 131 angstroms wavelength from the GOES 19 SUVI, and say fare thee well. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody who has done so. Once again, don't forget to press the subscribe button if you're new. Get us up to 6,000 subscribers, a milestone that we will not be celebrating. We celebrated 5,000 subscribers, but 6,000 isn't really a milestone. When we get to 10,000, we'll do a celebration for that, a special extended live stream and so forth. And again, please press the share button, as frankly, the overlords of YouTube do a lousy job of promoting this channel. Anyway, in the meantime, I've been your host, Dan, aka Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And until next time, may that solar wind be at your back.